welcome back to another episode of the Cardboard Herald, my chance to talk with creative gamers and game creators. I'm your host, Jack, and that's actually not the case for this episode. It's a little bit funny because recently I've talked about how I wanted to have more voices on the Cardboard Herald for this to be a platform for all things awesome in board games, and this was another great opportunity to have one of the team over here at the Cardboard Herald hop in and do a guest interview. So you're going to hear Luke Muench's interview with Curt Covert of Smirk Dagger and more recently Smirk Laughter Games. And this is a really cool interview. I'm super happy to present it to you, and I am just thrilled that we're able to actually realize this vision of giving more voices to the Cardboard Herald. You'll still hear a lot of me in the future. I will probably be the main contributor for the Cardboard Herald going forward, but so long as there are interested and interesting people who want to produce content on here, who want to take part, who share in the vision of having enthusiastic coverage for awesome stuff, then I'm interested in talking with that person about coming on here, writing a review, maybe coming on a podcast, maybe doing a video, who knows. But in this case, I'm so thrilled that Luke was able to jump in and do this interview with Curt Covert of Smirk Dagger and Smirk Laughter Games. So let's hop to it.
I'm here today with Curt Covert of Smirk Dagger and Smirk Laughter. It's good to have you on board, man.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And you have the lucky privilege of being the first person that I am interviewing solo, or interviewing for the Cardboard Herald at all, for that matter, which is super fun. I don't know if you recall, but we have met before. I met up with you at Origins with Doug Lewandowski this year.
That's right.
That was a really cool experience. This year's been a big year for you guys, I gotta say. Everywhere I go, I'm hearing something about Smirk Dagger. Even last Monday, I actually ran into a few people who were just like, yeah, Curt Covert, he's a really cool guy. But what was a really interesting question was the moment I mentioned that I was interviewing you, someone was like, I need you to ask this for me. So the first question coming at you today is Curt Covert your real name?
So, this is not the first time I've gotten that question, by the way.
Okay.
But yes, my actual name is Curt Covert. And everything else that makes that ironic came after.
I think it just rolls off the tongue in a very nice way, where people are like, but is it real? Could it really be that?
Yeah, it's like a Marvel name, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we're just waiting for Fin Fang Foom to show up with J. Jonah Jameson,
Peter Parker, and everybody else.
It's ridiculous. I grew up on Marvel. I actually grew up at the best time for it. When I was 10 years old, I got the first 10 issues of the original Spider-Man series, and that happened to be the year that Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire was released in theaters. So it was like a perfect storm, and I just immediately fell in love with comics that year, thanks to my cousin and, circumstances.
Yeah, and I've actually become a much bigger Marvel fan these days than I ever have. I mean, I was always an X-Men kind of guy, but, DC, back in the day, Justice League, Batman, Batman's my jam. But I tell you what, they seem like they can do no wrong when it comes to this movie franchise. They're doing just a hell of a job.
Oh, sure. What would you say is your favorite X-person?
Oh, that's not fair.
I know. The crazy out of the left corner questions over here.
You know what? So I have always been a huge fan of both Wolverine and Magic.
Okay. Oh, I dig the answer of Magic. That's a super curveball right there. Yeah. I'm lame and have to go with Cyclops, but I've always been a big fan of Beast, which gets very little love, I find. Yeah. So.
Oh, and Nightcrawler is also a big fan. I love Nightcrawler as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. The soul of the X-Men.
Yeah,
absolutely. Going back to how I've been hearing a lot about you recently. You've definitely built up a really fantastic reputation for yourself over the years. As one of the nicest board game designers out there. And I'm not trying to be like facetious or flattering or anything. Like, that's genuinely what people have, without context or, bribery or anything. Just kind of like been like, yeah, Curt goes out of his way to help people. He's really sweet. He's one of the coolest guys that I meet at cons. Where do you think that reputation comes from? You know what I mean?
Well, one, I'm delighted to hear that that's the case. Certainly, it's I think it's kind of just a natural outgrowth of my personality. I mean, I'm pretty easy to get along with. I'm not really necessarily confrontational, and I have to say, especially in the board game industry, I receive so much help from other game companies and the creative people there or the owners that when I was starting up, I made cold calls and they helped me avoid a lot of pitfalls. So I've always believed in the pass it forward spirit of that, returning that kindness that I received to other people who are on a similar journey. But even above and beyond that, I mean, I think it's part of my DNA to just not be a jerk to people.
Well, and that's a particularly good trait to have in the day and age where that seems few and far between, for sure.
Well,
not necessarily in the industry. I'm just speaking generally.
Yeah, and I think the anonymity of online and all of that doesn't lead to actual discourse. It leads to a lot of people shouting their views without actually having a conversation. And
certainly.
I typically don't partake in that. I love a great conversation. I love a good debate, but it has to be a human discord.
Definitely. Do you feel like this kind of general attitude translates into how you personally make games as opposed to other games that you see on the market?
Here's the thing. The first thing is that I think why it's probably so surprising to people that I actually have that reputation in some ways is that because my games for 14 years were the antithesis to that idea. I mean, Smirk and Dagger was built on the idea that games were more fun when you could stab a friend in the back, and so I put all kinds of dickery into my games just because I thought it was funny. and honestly, that's one of my early loves in board gaming was just, I mean, like starting with like Tom Jolly's Whiz War, like when you can line someone up in your sights and you just know what's waiting for them, and then you just let them have it, and they get pissed off and you laugh about it. I mean, that to me, that whole emotional exchange is like the real juice of gaming for me, and that's why I built all my games with that kind of core to them. But while that is very cathartic, it's not really how I behave in real life. So that is kind of interesting duality, I guess. But I guess to answer your question more fully, how does my reputation kind of flow out of that into what I do as a publisher? Well, I think now that I'm working with designers more and more, and the designs are not just my own, but I'm bringing the great ideas of others on board. I'm a very good collaborator, and I value the input of the designers. If there's something I'm struggling with, I think there's something could be improved. There are some very large companies that, you sign the contract and, that's it. Thank you very much, and we're going to take it from here. But I'm still small enough where I like a lot of continued, touch opportunities where I try to coordinate with the designers. I bring them in on things I'm thinking about, and if there's a problem in doing that pathway, then that designer is going to know it quicker than I will. And I found that the kind of that spirit of partnership has led to some better games, and has also led to more people seeking me out to show me games, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fairly accurate, and being involved with a lot of people in the industry. I've definitely seen a lot of people come to you more willingly and more openly with projects that they might be hesitant to bring to others, simply because you're someone who they can be trusting with. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
Speaking of like that duality that you have, what prompted you to start working on the Smirk and Laughter line of games then?
Well, so the first thing to say is, for 14 years, I really have done Smirk and Dagger as a part-time gig. I had a full-time job as a creative director at a marketing agency, and I spent an inordinate amount of time, doing that job. It absorbed a lot of my time. So Smirk and Dagger is what I did between like 9 and midnight, 1 a.m. every night. And it was a labor of love. It was, try to push the nut forward a little bit every day, because if I didn't keep it moving, somehow it was going to stall. So 1 game a year was all I could handle with that kind of schedule. And it was easy to come up with 1 great backstabbing game a year. Now, suddenly, I find myself in a position where I'm doing this full time. And part of that is that I also don't have my regular salary, so I've got to produce more than 1 game a year. Now, to really maintain a game company, a good 5 to 6 games is really what you're shooting for. And certainly they can't all be amazing backstabbing games. So the other thing is that while the backstabbing genre that I had built around the company was great in that it set expectation, and if you loved 1 game, you were probably a fan for life, because they all delivered a similar kind of vibe. If you didn't like backstabbing games, I had nothing else to offer you. And as a full-time game company, I really don't have that luxury anymore. So I knew even a couple of years ago that I was, the goal was to actually arrive at this point. And so I saw some of those things coming up, in my crystal ball, and I said, well, I'll need to probably either expand what I do or create a sub-brand that allows me to do more and broaden my shoulders. And I knew I didn't want to dilute Smirk and Dagger. I didn't want it to become meaningless. I had done such a good job. In fact, I planted my flag so hard that the one time I tried to push the envelope with Sutaku, which was a game I didn't develop specifically for myself. It was actually a game I was pitching to Hasbro at the time under a different name. And it's a great pub style dice game, but it was push your luck. So you could screw yourself by pushing too hard. And when Hasbro didn't take it, I loved the design, and I said, yeah, you know what, maybe I'll do it anyway. Screwing yourself over is maybe, just tangential enough that, it'll make sense. Well, I brought it to a trade show, and retailers and distributors were looking at it, and they were like, well, where's the Smirk and Dagger in this Smirk and Dagger game? And I had to stop the presses so I could quickly come up with a mechanic that would make it my game again. And then, so I realized, right then how tight a corner I had painted myself into. So when I was now faced with having to create games that were outside of that, I looked again deeper at what I really loved about backstabbing games and why I decided to hang my hat on that at the outset. And the reason I did was because, again, I loved the emotional reaction. I loved what that did to immersive gameplay and making people feel something at the table. That creates memories. It creates excitement. And all of those things are what I think, board gaming can do and do well. And for me, that was kind of like the hallmark of the games I enjoyed. It's not that I didn't enjoy chess and its mental challenge. It's not that I didn't love Euros. It's just that it's a different experience, and what I love is more about the social and emotional experience and getting deep into theme more than anything else. So I said, well, maybe that is really where I need to be. If I broaden this now, so my line is, again, about creating emotional experiences at the table. Well, I can paint with a whole bunch of new emotional colors. And so Smirk and Laughter was just that. It was everything that wasn't backstabbing and mean and terrible. It was any other kind of emotional engagement at the table. That could be part of the Smirk and Laughter line, and they could live side by side. They would make sense together, and I would still keep Smirk and Dagger, its own thing.
I have to imagine that marketing for the two, completely unique lines of games must be trying at times. You know what I mean?
I thought it might be, but what I've really found is that everything I just described about how to unify those two brands under this kind of emotional connectedness to the material has absolutely been the way that I've gone to market. It's the way I've presented the games. And so I can even now talk in a singular voice about the entire line. And I'm happy to say that the response has been amazing, both with fans, distributors, retailers. In fact, the Smirk and Laughter line has gotten a lot of notoriety and excitement.
Oh, absolutely. Especially after the gangbusters that was Gen Con this year. Wow. 3 of your games being on the top 10 most talked about games of the event. Sales and attention skyrocketing through the roof. It's really impressive. What factors do you think in particular really was there any catalyst or any singular factor that stands out to you as something that's strongly attributed to that this year?
Boy, well, it was probably a lot of things. The first thing is I have to say I was as shocked as anybody. I don't think on the BGG Buzz, which is the kind of the top 10 thing you were talking about a moment ago.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever crested maybe number 38 ever. And there were more games launching at Gen Con this year than I think ever on record. There was, I think, something like 625 new games being showcased. And for my 3 titles that were new to have hit top 10 blew my mind. I about fell over. Someone came over on Saturday and told me that very thing. And I could not believe it. I had to walk over and just look at the board just to be sure. But I think in large part, I spent a lot of time and energy making sure that the games I had ready to go this year were going to help me get on the map.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had fans for years, but I've never had that one game that made me a must carry at every store.
Really, that's interesting. For me, I always thought Cutthroat Caverns was that title.
You're right, and Cutthroat Caverns is certainly our most acclaimed game. It's certainly we still sell an amazing amount of it right now, but it wasn't the code names of the year. It never was it never got to that peak where everyone had to stock it because everyone was looking for it. And part of that is because, specializing in backstabbing games, it's polarizing. Not everyone loves them. So, I had to kind of take that on. That's, I was kind of serving a niche, and I was comfortable with that. So part of it was making sure the titles were impactful, but honestly, I found I got lucky. Tower of Madness, which was a game I had in development for 3.5, 4 years, trying to find a way to get it produced so that it wasn't going to break anyone's bank just to buy a copy. Most of the development was trying to figure out how to produce it. That has such table appeal. It got people so excited. That was one aspect. But if you looked at, Before There Were Stars, if you looked at Not So Fast, these were situations where I got amazingly lucky. Some designers I know and respect showed me some amazing games, and not only did I fall in love with them, but I knew that this was the time, this was the moment to break into this new brand. Not So Fast was this amazing quick reaction party game that took kind of where Jungle Speed was and ramped up the party atmosphere like crazy. And I was like, wow, if I was going to launch Smirk and Laughter with any title, this has to be it. And then Before There Were Stars, which is just this amazing storytelling game. I tell you what, I fell in love with the pitch of this game when Alex and Matt showed it to me, and I said, man, if this plays anywhere as amazing as it sounds when in your pitch, I mean, I can't even believe it. Just the idea of like telling creation myths when by rolling these star-pipped dice into the sky and then pulling constellations in your story to tell the myth of your people. I geeked out on it, and I think because I had such passion for the idea, I was able to like take it, take someone's baby and really shepherd it forward with the same love and passion that they had for it, and honoring everything they had in it, and then pushing it that much further. I actually had a really nice compliment. There was another designer, another game company who'd taken a look at it and said, "Oh boy, we saw that, but we ended up passing on it." And but I tell you what, I mean, I don't think anyone could have done what you did with this game. The artwork is amazing. The rule book, Golden Distribution, Phil Lacefield, he looked at the rule book and he said he almost wept reading the rule book just because it was so on theme and so warm and emotional. And that just equals the gameplay that they built into it, and I was just able to showcase it. But in all of these cases, I really feel like these titles were just like, it was the right time, the right place, and everything just fell together. I'm delighted they actually popped and people noticed, but you never know when you launch a title whether it's going to find its audience, whether it's going to get buzz and talked about, and of course lead to sales.
Right, absolutely. Well, I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about Tower of Madness, or Cthulhu, I believe is what it was called previously, right?
Well, that was my working title, was Cthulhu. Okay. Yeah. But obviously wanted to stay away from anything that would be right. Construed as a legal issue, right? So, but no, I mean, and I think it's funny too, when people look at the tower, they obviously see the inspiration, but I always tell people, well, don't think of this game as Kerplunk, right? It bears about as much resemblance to that game as calling Dread, a Jenga game. Even though that's what makes Dread so cool, is their use of a Jenga tower to add tension to an RPG. I saw that RPG and I thought that was such a brilliant use of a very familiar game mechanic to add so much drama and tension to that RPG. I was like, there's got to be another way to do that, and hence that's where Tower of Madness was born.
It's really interesting to sort of see how people take very familiar designs and sort of evolve them, like how paperback and hardback is, Scrabble as a deck builder. Like, that always intrigues me and that kind of thing. But when it comes to Tower of Madness, what really strikes me is, like, there are so many Cthulhu games out there. There's so much love for Lovecraftian, if you don't mind my pun, or play on words, I guess. What kind of process did you go through to sort of make your game more than just another Cthulhu game?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know that I guess what I have to do is I have to kind of take a step back in the design process. And again, I got a little inspiration from Dread. So I was looking for smashing very different things together. And of course, even back in the day when I did Run for Your Life Candyman, which was that twisted parody of Candyland, I'm known for kind of doing things like that. So I had this great familiar mechanic, and I was like, great, now what can I do with it? And so I started thinking about all kinds of different themes, and when I finally hit upon the idea of you could be losing your marbles as you're playing this dice game, and you could literally be losing your marbles, I thought, well, that's just too good. So the theme about bring in Cthulhu wasn't necessarily, I didn't start with, I'm going to make a Cthulhu game that's different than anything else. I had this cool game, and Cthulhu just naturally grew out of it. So it was different just because I was building it different, and I wasn't building it for, a very heavy tone. I think, rightly so. It's a horror game, so most of the Cthulhu games, but not all, have a very kind of heavy feel to them. And I was looking for something that was going to deliver the thrill, the tension, the suspense of not knowing what was going to be dropping out of this tower and how it was going to impact you. And at the same time, trying to add a little push your luck dice mechanic and some card play and some other stuff. So what I ended up putting on and what I ended up tearing off made it the game it is right now, but I really wasn't looking to come up with the a Fantasy Flight feeling game. I was looking for something that felt unique to its own. And it just happened to be that the Cthulhu theme just went so beautifully.
I got a chance to play it for the first time on Monday. Someone had brought it to my local gaming group, and it definitely is very much unique in terms of how it plays, how it sort of plays off of the Cthulhu theme. I immediately gravitated towards the shoot the moon aspect of let's just go crazy and I'll be the one to end the world. But yeah, definitely a very fun title.
How'd you do?
Oh, I did not succeed. We just barely got 2 of the 3 Doom tokens out because we found out that the third Doom was wedged between 2 of the tentacles in like the top left corner of the stack, where I was never going to expect it to be hiding. But lo and behold, yeah, so me and my one friend were like, all right, we're going to go crazy. One of us has to win. But it just wasn't to be. We had a great time with it, though. Oh, absolutely. So yeah, that's definitely been one that I've heard a lot about. That obviously I had a good time giving a shot the other day, and I look forward to playing it again in the future.
It's amazing. You look at the tower and you're like, how could a marble still be standing in that tower?
Yeah,
the physics
absolutely.
of it are very fun.
Well, and people are like slowly pulling out the tentacles. I'm like, if you pull it out slow, you pull it out fast, it's not going to make a difference. But secretly that could totally make a difference. You might accidentally like shift the tower a little bit in your efforts.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to sort of see that all play out and to see the progression of the narrative, as you might say, over the course of the game as people sort of go in and out of what they're going for or sort of lean in one direction or another.
Yeah, and this is a game that brings for me, one of my new favorite mechanics that I love to play with now. Mm-hmm. For such a long time, one of the mainstay, characteristics of a Take That game was that there was player elimination. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, that has fallen out of disfavor, and rightly so, because no one wants to sit on the side while the game continues and they're just twiddling their thumbs.
Right, absolutely.
So one of the things that I have now introduced to a lot of my games is the idea of player transformation, mm-hmm. where your gameplay state changes. There is very definite, you don't want to be in this place, but you can still play the game and you can still win, but it's not going to be the same way anymore.
Right.
And it's something we did with Nevermore. It was true in Student Bodies. It's true in Tower of Madness. There's a lot of fun to be had with this idea of changing everything you know about the game and continuing to play.
Yeah, I definitely made a note of that very early on, and I found that transformation to be interesting, especially when you've got player abilities that when you go insane are no longer active and that kind of thing. That can certainly change the game for some players, so that was interesting to observe. So you talked a little bit already about Before There Were Stars, but Not So Fast. Where did that title come from? Like, obviously there's that fun pun in there, there's a lot of like silliness to it, but like what was there a catalyst where that title came to be? Because with Jungle Speed, there isn't really a theme to Jungle Speed. There isn't really like that sort of through line that Not So Fast really has, and you mentioned that was kind of an inspiration for it. So
so this was a game by Jeff Lai, and I met him in Toronto at a prototype playtesting convention. He basically had the game fully formed. He had a lot of the art done. He had those great tokens with the nut faces on them, and he worked with Chris McCoy to create them. And he's a web cartoonist, so it came out fully formed. Not So Fast, just a pun on not so fast, because you're constantly like trying to grab things out before someone else can get them. And honestly, I have to say, all of that really goes to Jeff, who delivered it almost ready to print.
That must be a nice feeling to sort of be like handed a game, look at it and go, oh yeah, this is like pretty much good to go. Like that must be a huge relief for you as someone who has to make a lot of games day to day.
Yeah, it was great. And normally I tell designers, oh no, you don't need to do, don't pay for art, just put a placeholder, whatever, we're going to redo the art anyway. But they did an amazing job on it, and I loved it kind of the way it was. The only thing I did really was the nutty poses used to be text, and it used to say, touch your elbow, or bunny ears, that kind of thing. And I wanted that to be just more visual, so I said, no, we should use illustration to communicate the poses. Just
Well, and with such a visual medium, it just makes sense in terms of how. Yeah.
But other than that, the gameplay was tight. The nut characters that they had done were adorable. In fact, I had a fan, Karen, did these amazing plushies.
I was just gonna say, because I remember those from Origins, and they were the cutest things.
Oh my god, yeah! Karen Albright did them. She saw them at PAX Unplugged last year. We had the prototype still out, Jeff's original game, and she's like, "Would you send me the art for those nuts?" I was like, "Well, sure, yeah." She's like, "Yeah, I've got a little project in mind." I was like, "Okay." I had no idea what she had in mind, but just before the Gamma Trade Show this year, she sent me these plush, really just beautifully designed stuffed plushies of the nut characters, and they looked amazing. So she just told me that she wants to do the remaining two. So we have the cashew and the pistachio, and now she's going to do walnut and almond too.
That's awesome. And I'm sure there's going to be those people out there who are going to see those and go, how can I get my hands on one of those? Like, they're just the most adorable things.
Yeah, we talked about producing them, but I think I'm not sure if we'll end up doing it. But
fair.
Karen did say that she might share the patterns with people who are so inclined.
Okay, very neat. That's super
Yeah.
cool. So moving away from some of the easy stuff that you deal with day to day, what's some of the more challenging, what's like the most challenging obstacle you find yourself facing in the board gaming industry these days?
So it's a timely question. The answer to that question, I think, changes based on the year. But right now, I think the biggest challenge for board game publishers is there are so many games being produced in a year now.
Oh, yeah.
It's impossible for distributors to carry them all. Mm-hmm. Impossible for retailers to carry them all. Impossible for fans to buy them all. And this has led to a lot of amazing games not getting the focus or appreciation that they might deserve. Some just because of the timing, maybe you went up against a Magic release and retailers just they spent their money making sure they had, Magic on hand. Therefore, they didn't buy the board games as heavy that month and they missed a great title.
Yeah.
And now missing that kind of launch window can be devastating for a game. Because it used to be, back 14 years ago, I launched Hexex as our first game, and that built and built and built, and I sold a lot of Hexex over the years, and the audience kept on growing for it. Well, now, 6 months, a year later, that game is less interesting because everyone is clamoring for, what's the new thing?
Mm-hmm.
And that mentality of the hotness, the new, and devaluing what is out there just because it's not new, that is that's tough stuff. It's hard to actually sustain a business with that model.
Mm-hmm.
And it means that each game has a much shorter lifespan. So all the development, all the care, all the art that goes into it just doesn't have a long enough life. And in many cases, I find that kind of sad.
Oh, yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. Recent years, I've been seeing that pop up in a lot more very palpable ways, not just with new titles altogether, but with expansions for old classics where it feels like they just aren't given the energy, the development time, because everything has to just keep pumping out. It's actually, it's really funny that you say that, because I was just having this conversation the other day with Jeff Gum, of all people. Mm-hmm. For those of you who aren't familiar, Jeff Gum, well, actually, would you want to talk about that at all, or no? I don't want to spill any beans or anything.
Well, so so yes, Jeff and I do have a project coming up, but we have not really announced it yet.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. But we probably will be shortly once I get some art done. And that's going to be in the next month or two, probably.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to see that process move forward. But yeah. Absolutely. Very cool stuff. So building off of that, how do you hope to sort of build your company moving forward in terms of what you want to see out of your process, out of what games you're bringing to the table? How do you envision next Gen Con for Smirk and Dagger/Laughter a year from now?
Well, so yeah, we're already in that development cycle, and as you mentioned, Jeff's game is among those titles. In fact, we hope to have. Well, you know what? So we'll talk just a little bit. So Jeff has got a great game. It's a hidden trader game, but it operates in a very different mode than most on the market, and it's a little bit less about the verbal meta game of trying to cast, doubt on other players. It's more about how you play what you have. So there's a little bit more toothy game to it, which is what I really love about it. And it tends to be like the hidden trader game for people who tend to not like other hidden trader games as well. So it also features this great shuffle building mechanic, so it's always different. You know, your agenda and your character get merged together, you know, a set of cards, so that there's a lot of variety that comes out of it, and a lot of different ways to try strategies, both on the human side and the trader side. So in any case, I think it's that's going to be a really amazing title for us next year. And again, I like it because I want my games to stand out, to not just be knockoffs of X, Y, or Z, but to be unique in some way, that to offer something that's just a little bit different than what's out there. I look for games where again the emotions are going to get churned up in some way, and you know, I think it's probably true of most hidden trader games that you know, there is that element to it. But so I'm looking, you know, also at other things too. We've got another game which is very much a social kind of a party game, which is called The Intervention, where you are sitting around as a group of people, you know, concerned friends, wanting to help out one of your friends who has a problem but doesn't know what it is. So they take a card and they flip it up, and that's what their problem. They don't know what it is, but you have to gently guide them to understand what it is without being the person that tips them off.
That's a fantastic idea. I love it.
Oh my god, it's an amazing game. So in any case, so yeah, we're like curating already, like the things that we want to showcase for next year. All of them are going to, you know, live up to either the Smirk and Dagger with, you know, the nasty backstabbing, or come in with some other way to really emotionally involve you in gameplay, so that when you get up from the game, you're telling stories about, oh my god, that thing that happened. And to me, that's what I love to see when people get up from a game. Not like, you know, oh, I really optimized my turn and I was able to get that one extra cube that you didn't get. That is a fun game to play, but I look for games where you stand up and you're recounting the tales of the game. Because those are the thematic experience that touches your emotion and just make memories, and that's what I love.
Absolutely, and I think that is what provides a game with a lot of staying power, is being able to think back to it. Again, like you were saying, amidst the onslaught of just constant releases, those like moments, those memories that you can cling to and go, yeah, that was a fantastic experience. And I definitely do feel like a lot of the games you're making now and a lot of the games that are coming soon do that tenfold. So I'm really excited to see what Smirk and Dagger, Smirk and Laughter has up their sleeve next.
Well, I tell you what, we're not even done this year. We've got coming. Let's see, I think probably for October 31st.
Okay. You know, just a random date, no significance or anything.
It just the way it worked out.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was the launch of my company too.
Really?
Back in 2003 was Halloween Day. That's when I got my first games in. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yep. But no, we have Koi coming.
Oh yeah.
And Koi is a design by Bill Lasek, and it is a very zen, very almost tranquil game experience where you're a koi fish swimming around the pond trying to gobble up the best meal you can of dragonflies and frogs. Mm-hmm. And it's program movement as you play cards swimming around, and it makes the fish swim really like back and forth, like, you know, like a fish do, just based on all the turning of the cards. And then you can also beautify the pond, and every time you enhance the beauty by adding lily pads or cherry blossoms or frogs, everything you add is either going to be a little bit good for you or a little bit of a hindrance for them. Mm-hmm. And then the weather patterns change with every turn, so there's a little variation to every round of play. It's just a cool game, and the art is stunning.
Oh yeah,
absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I've seen some of the some of the shots on BGG and at obviously Origins, and that game just looks beautiful, 100%. It's got such a nice style to it.
We found a fine artist out in Chicago. Well, actually, I was looking for an artist, and all the places I typically go for art, I wasn't really finding the style that I wanted. I definitely want it to be very evocative of the theme. I wanted just beauty and koi fish, and like it had to be colorful and just, you know, vibrant. And so not finding what I wanted, I went to Google and I just did koi fish illustration. And in this kind of random search, I found this one piece. I was like, oh my god, that's really gorgeous. And I followed the breadcrumbs, and it went over to this woman's website, Fine Artist out in Chicago. And I say, well, boy, you know, she has a gallery in Chicago. Chances are she's not going to have time to do board game art. And I said, well, let me contact her anyway. And boy, sure enough, she said, oh, you know what? That sounds like fun. Yeah, let's do it. So
what you're trying to say is she wasn't coy about it at all?
Oh my god, that's beautiful.
But that's those kinds of stories are so interesting to me. Similar to like the whole narrative behind Scythe, finding the artist and then sort of developing a game through that. Just kind of how board games bring people together even before they're made. Like that's just so cool.
And Christy was so great to work with. Lastly, coming, I'm going to say mid-November.
Okay.
Roll for Your Life Candyman.
The sequel to the Candyman narrative, as it were?
Well, so, you know, I was not convinced I would ever produce another, you know, part of the Candyman
Mythos?
World.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, back originally when I created the first game, I was never even going to print it. The game was a joke. I was just going to offer it as a free PDF that you could download and play with your own Candyland game. But when retailers and distributors saw it, they're like, "Oh no, what have you done?" Yes, any full color, any price you want on it, we'll sell the crap out of it. and they have. So after 4 years, I finally knuckled under to people saying, "When's the next one?" and did Shootin' Ladders. Which also did pretty well. But then I was thinking, yeah, that's probably going to be it. Well, Andy Jeremiah ended up showing me an amazing dice game. And it's just this speed dice game of trying to roll a set of, 4 matching icons, grabbing what's now a candy cane at the center of the table, and then demanding the limb off another cookie. So it essentially distills the most fun part of Run for Your Life Candyman, which is the candy cage match, into like a 10-minute, high-speed, frantic cookie smashing event, and it's just hysterical. So I was like, yes, we will definitely, go back to the well for these cookies one more time. But I think people are going to absolutely love it because it's just so immersive, and people just like, they want to play again just because they're like, I'm going to get you. So.
That's really exciting to sort of hear, like, just how much success that series has come for you, and that you're still finding like ways of making it fun for you as a designer, as well as giving, your fans, the audience, what they've been asking for. So that's really neat. That's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on with me, Curt. This has been a freaking blast. And
my pleasure.
Your reputation is very true. You are a super awesome guy, and I am looking forward to talking with you in the future about all of these projects, because I definitely want to follow up with you at some point. This stuff sounds amazing, and I'm looking forward to trying it out myself.
All right, well, great, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone, that's going to do it for our podcast today. Thank you so much to Luke for guest hosting, and of course to Curt for coming on to the Cardboard Herald. And I appreciate everyone out there listening. If you have any feedback for this episode, it is Luke's debut. I think he did a great job, and I'm sure you want to tell him that too. You can hit us up on Twitter at Cardboard Herald, or you can send us a message via the contact link at the top of the webpage, www.cardboardherald.com. You can also find Luke on our other podcast, TCbH Hangouts, which is hosted by Chris Douglas, and Luke and I are also regular contributors on there, and Luke has a whole bevy of reviews that he's contributed to the Cardboard Herald over the past year. I think you should check those out. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald. Thank you for listening to the Cardboard Herald. As always, everything we do is ad-free and audience-supported. If you'd like to help keep it that way, find the Patreon link at the top of our webpage, cardboardherald.com. We have several levels of support with various rewards. If you enjoyed the show, we do a whole bunch of other stuff, including reviews, interviews, and recommendations across writing, podcasts, and video. You can find that on our YouTube channel or by visiting any of our social media or our website. So with that out of the way, thank you again for listening to the Cardboard Herald.